We just considered immediate punishment to solve prisoner dilemmas. Alternatives to immediate punishment are needed when immediate punishment is not possible. Immediate punishments punish current non-cooperation. About the only way to do that when strategies are chosen simultaneously is with a low price guarantee when firms produce perfect or gross substitutes. Even in those special cases of perfect or gross substitutes, some low price guarantees are illegal because the guarantees result in higher prices that hurt consumers. So for the next best thing, when a game is repeated periodically, for example, yearly, you cannot punish current non-cooperation, but you can punish past non-cooperation. And you do that with the Grimm strategy. The Grimm strategy is you start by cooperating, but if the other player is ever uncooperative, you never forgive them and instead inflict maximum damage forever. To paraphrase the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, the Grimm strategy is, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, I'll burn down your house with you in it. Before we get into the technical details, we need a finance review. So if the interest rate is R, express that as a decimal so that say 0.15 is the same as 15%. You can invest $1 today and draw out the interest of R starting next period and lasting forever. That's called a perpetuity. Conversely, the present value of $1 stream of payments starting next period and lasting forever is 1 over R today. That's the present value. We're going to need that later, so remember it. So here we have a prisoner dilemma that we previously considered about advertising. And we're going to ask some questions about it, about these two companies, Reynolds and Phillips, choosing between spending $10,000 on advertising or not advertising at all, so spending zero. And they're doing this each month. So if one advertises and the other one doesn't, the advertiser has to pay the $10,000, but then takes $100,000 profit from the other. And then if they each advertise, they each pay the $10,000, but then the advertisements cancel out, no one steals from anyone else, but you still have to pay for the ads. And suppose the monthly interest rate is 1%. So expressed as a decimal, that's 0.01. Now, about this situation, we're going to ask, are there mutual gains from the players following the Grimm strategy for the repeated game, the game repeated month after month, rather than repeating the solution to the one-shot game? And what I mean by one-shot game is where strategies are chosen as if the current period were the only period. You just live in today. Whatever the current moment is, just do your best at that moment. Don't think about the future and don't think about the past. Is it a Nash equilibrium for both players to follow the Grimm strategy? If it is, then they've solved their prisoner dilemma. So, step one, fill out the strategic form payoff table with payoffs in thousands of dollars. For example, if Reynolds advertises, and Phillips does not, Phillips no advertised, then Reynolds pays $10,000 for the ad. So in terms of thousands, that's 10 for the ad, and they steal 100. So that's 100 in revenue minus a 10 cost, leaving you a net profit of 90. The other person loses that 100 to you. Now, in the hypothetical one-shot game, if you were to repeat this game period after period, month after month, you would seek a dominant solution. Notice that advertising is better than not advertising for Reynolds. This first row is better than the second row, no matter what the other party does. And this first column is better than the second column, no matter what the row person does. And that's for Phillips. So each of them has a dominant strategy of advertising. That's what would happen in the one-shot game. And we've previously seen this as a prisoner dilemma, because they can't just get together and agree to not advertise. They can't trust each other. Well, let's see if we can solve this with the Grimm strategy. The Grimm strategy has two parts. You start off by cooperating, And cooperating means you're not advertising, you're trying to get this result. And if they both followed the Grimm strategy, they would stay here forever. Every period, they're going to get this profit of 0 each period, which is better than losing 10. So you cooperate in any period given that the other players cooperated in all previous periods. So if you're both following the Grimm strategy, great. But if a player will stop cooperating if the other player has not cooperated in some previous period. So if the other player has broken your trust, you're going to stop cooperating, and then you're going to start punishing. And what is the punishment? The punishment is for you to advertise. Now, if, for example, Reynolds is punishing Philip, then Reynolds would choose to not advertise. Philip would want to make the best of it, and Reynolds would punish by advertising. Philip would make the best of that by advertising as well, and now getting this -10. So when he's being punished, Philip is getting this -10 rather than the 0 he would have had if he would have continued to cooperate. So in detail, just to give you the feel for what the Grimm strategy does. If the other player cooperates and does not advertise in any period, so that's what he's agreed to do, then you don't advertise in any period, and it's all good, you get this forever. If the other player does advertise in the first period, so he's fooled you in the first period, you don't let him fool you anymore, and you start to advertise in every period after the first period. And you do that to inflict maximum punishment on the other player for advertising in the first period. Your purpose is to hurt the other player by your advertising. You're not trying to help yourself, you're trying to hurt them. And the same would be true if the other player does not advertise in the first period, but does advertise in the second period. So what you would do is not advertise in the first period. You don't advertise in the second period either, but then you do start advertising in every period after the second one, after you've caught him cheating, and you do that to inflict maximum damage. So what's going to be the net result of all this? Well, can Reynolds trust Philip to follow the Grimm strategy? So consider the effect of Reynolds following his cooperative choice of not advertising, but Philip's rejecting his Grimm strategy and instead cheating and choosing advertising. So here's Reynolds, he's following his Grimm strategy, and he's not advertising. What is going to happen if the other person cheats him, tries to cheat him? And so the other person starts advertising. In that first period of cheating, Philip's payoff increases from 0 to 90. That's an increase of 90, that's the gain from cheating. But then comes the punishment. Reynolds will now never forgive this, and so in all future periods, Reynolds will start advertising. Now, Phillips knows he's being punished, he makes the best of it, and his best response to being punished is advertising himself, which ends up losing him 10 rather than losing him 100. So what happens is, during all the periods he's being punished, Phillips is at a payoff of -10. If instead he would have continued to advertise, not advertise, if he continued to cooperate, he would have had a 0. So what happens is, by cheating, Phillips currently gains 90, but then in all future periods, he loses 10. To convert those future losses into present value, you divide by the interest rate. So the present value of a 10 loss in all future periods divided by the interest rate is $1,000. So what happens is, by cheating, Phillips gains 90 today, but loses 1,000 in present value, and that's not worth cheating. And then finally, can Phillips trust Reynolds to cooperate and follow the Grimm strategy? Well, consider the effects of Phillips following Grimm strategy. He's cooperating, he's not advertising, But then one period, Reynolds decides to cheat. Reynolds can boost his payoff by advertising in that period by cheating from 0 to 90. He's going to gain 90. But then Reynolds responds in all future periods by advertising as well. Phillips knows he's being punished, and so he's going to continue to advertise to get this negative 10. His punishment then is he's forced to a payoff of negative 10 rather than the 0 he would have had if he would have continued to cooperate. So altogether, what we have is by cheating on using the Grimm strategy, Reynolds' one-time gain is 90. His future loss, his future permanent loss is 10. When you convert that 10 into present value by dividing by the interest rate, you get the present value of 1,000. So you can gain 90 today, but then lose a present value of 1,000 by cheating, and so it's not worth cheating. Now, this solves the prisoner dilemma. The Grimm strategy, the name Grimm refers to the punishment, and it's ironic because the Grimm strategy, you never forgive, you deal maximum cruel and unusual punishment to the other party for their non-cooperation. But the irony is that that non-forgiveness and cruelty allows all players to benefit because they can trust one another to cooperate and no one actually gets punished. So, for example, the ancient Hebrews had a rule to kill children that cursed their parents. Is that cruel? Some people say yes, but it depends. If the children are rational, they'll respond by not cursing their parents and so not need killing.